What is this? Are you going to cover the QT situation because she's getting a lot of hate right now? He already did. No, I didn't. I'm not entirely aware of what has taken place with QTCinderella. I've only seen a couple tweets and
I'm not going to change, though. I'm not going to...
Yeah.
I will never believe that if I'm kind to a hateful person, that means I agree with them. I will never believe that. No matter what you guys say, I won't believe it. Because at the end of the day, if I'm around a racist person, I'm just not racist. I'm not. Me, I am not. They are, yes. But how am I supposed to help them ever? By cutting them off? No. Like, I get it. You guys can think in black and white, but that's not how it works over here. That's not how it works for me.
It's not comfortable.
This is my perfect example. It's like, okay, I collab with Lacey. Lacey makes some homophobic jokes sometimes that I am not comfortable with the homophobic jokes Lacey has made. Lacey knows that he can't make those jokes around me. That does not mean that I am homophobic. Believe it or not, everybody.
Yes.
Like, you are not who you associate with. Like, shut up. You're like, you don't build bridges by burning them. That's not how it works. Like, I've heard what a lot of people are saying, and I am sorry for the hurt that I've caused people. I'm really sorry. Like, again, if you don't want this apology, then it's not for you. And clearly you're not hurt, but I'm apologizing to people that I've hurt, and that's important to me. So if you're a part of the queer community and I've hurt you, I am sorry. If you are a person of color who I have hurt, I am sorry. I am. I really am. I think the way I was wording things was very like irresponsible and wrong. And I'm sorry.
I think as societal conditions worsen, people tend to look at imperfect allies and whatever their take is, no matter how bad it might be, right? People tend to look at imperfect allies as like the main enemy. I'm not one of those people. I never will be one of those people. Maybe because it's my privilege of being a white man, but I'm always going to be broadly understanding of people's background and some of the things that they say that come across as not so great, or especially in a moment of panic, if they feel like the pressure is on and then they end up ballooning into a much larger issue. White man and rich, yeah. I mean, you already know I'm the enemy. I'm an LGBTQ foe, as I openly declare all the time. Bro, are you blaming society for Cutie's words? Well, one, I don't even know what she said. Well, I know Cutie. I've said this before, but sometimes otherwise good people can come across very poorly. And I think the same level of charity and grace that we would offer people that we know personally, we often don't offer to people behind a camera. And the reality of the matter is the immediate pushback also causes people who are not ready for any sort of pushback whatsoever and treat it as hostile, will cause them to double down and make mistakes or come across really poorly. But ultimately, I usually try to look at everything that a person is doing. It's objectively very difficult for me to look at Twitch streamers, or at least like Twitch streamers like QTCinderella, or even streamers like the FaZe Clan boys, as major ops or major hurdles against like queer liberation, black liberation, and the overall liberation of all peoples, when there are much more important targets out there that get no scrutiny whatsoever because they're not in the ally adjacent territory. And it's also doubly silly when I consider my own position, someone whose ops are in the American government, you know, someone who's trying to do the right thing every day, combating this administration's fascist policies. It comes across as like very narrow in its focus. I don't think every single person is a secret fascist, and I also don't think that it's a healthy attitude to hold. I do, however, think that it's difficult to get people on board with stuff, especially when the easiest type of jokes that you can do is often targeting those who are vulnerable and marginalized. And a lot of people lean into that. So I perhaps give even more grace to those who don't always lean into that when they could easily do that with not only no repercussions whatsoever, but with promotion associated with it. Because in this day and age, I feel like if you're going to be, anti-queer, anti-immigrant, racist, white supremacist, there is a avenue for that sort of behavior. There's quite literally an avenue for that. Like you can gain more prominence if you become openly reactionary. This isn't even about Cutie, by the way. I don't know. It's very unproductive to grift to the left, quote unquote grift to the left. Watch Cutie's VOD if you want an in-depth apology. She apologized for it. Remember, this doesn't mean that QTCinderella nor anyone is actually infallible or above accountability or they're perfect. This is a reflection of the human condition, that we are all imperfect, that we all make mistakes. And sometimes, or all the time, we don't want to acknowledge that we made mistakes. Sometimes we can't see it because we're blinded by our own privilege. And in other instances, even if we kind of see it, it takes a while to get on board, especially if the broader attitude in the space is these wokes. They're unbearable. This is something that I warned about quite a bit. Like people literally look at us and my community, in spite of my attempts to constantly try to dial back, endlessly going after everyone over perceived slights or major slights that are valid, but making a much larger ordeal out of it. You're missing the point. Already, if they don't like us, it's not our job to get them to like us. What are you talking about? No, you're wrong. Your take is her take, Lamau. They about to fry your ass. OMG, I hate this drama. No, that has always been my job. No, that's you've completely missed the point as a 19-month subscriber if you think that that's not my job. Why do you think I spent so much time talking about Zohran Mamdani, constantly having to navigate between talking about the Islamophobic attacks that he's receiving and then refusing to actually address it? Because if he were to constantly talk about that, then he would come across as a spoiler. Sometimes you have to eat it. I do it every day. I'm just sick of these people and how we have to be nice. How about we say f them? Well, the problem is, I understand that. The problem is if you say that, then we can't win them over. And if you want to make changes, you got to win them over, especially those in the margins. I would present the impact that even QTCinderella has had in a very positive manner with the likes of Jason the Ween, someone that you guys actually enjoy. Jason the Ween has an incredibly tolerant community, especially in comparison to the vibes and the overall attitudes that many have in that demographic. We were just talking about the alt-right. We were just talking about the far-right manosphere pipeline just a second ago. They'll always win if we keep up this mentality. That's the unfortunate reality. They don't have these sorts of hangups. They don't need to have these sorts of hangups because there is no protection that is required for any of the marginalized people. So it's a much easier ground for them to stand on, to constantly refill their numbers, to constantly bring on more people onto their side. Whereas those of us who are on the left have a much more difficult undertaking. Privileged ass take, I love you, but be for real. It's also entirely dependent on the severity of the gripe. Like, I'm not in here being like, yeah, immediately have someone like hang out with someone who is being a Nazi or some shit. Don't be ridiculous. Or hang out with someone who's like dropping the T slur or talking about how trans people are disgusting or gross or some shit like that. That's not my point at all. But I think a lot of you immediately take it to that level, and it's understandable because that is what you have experienced in your life. As a black person, I'm tired of trying to convince Freeze to be right. I'm more about action now. Like, we need the Black Panthers back. I don't disagree with you on that. It's actually, I should have established the boundaries. Now, obviously, they can change, but it's kind of like how we do the moderation in this community, right? Where there are certain things that go beyond a minor slight. There are certain things that go beyond minor slights. I've always operated under the assumption, or not the assumption, but operated off of the analysis that everyone is susceptible to social conditioning, and therefore people are products of said social conditioning. So if we as leftists understand that we live in a white supremacist, patriarchal, anti-queer society, then the people are going to reflect those values. And obviously the goal should be to get them to stop believing in these things, right? Stop reflecting on those values. Everyone goes on a different journey. Sometimes you have that kid that we just watched on The Guardian talk about how he went on his own personal journey and was luckily snapped out of the manosphere black pill incel pipeline. Others are not so lucky. So my goal is to try and use the privilege that I have to try and pull people that are in the margins, that are about to make a big leap in the rightward direction, back to our side and develop a better understanding. And I think the only way that I can do that, or the way that I've done so successfully over the last couple of years, is not by coddling racists or coddling bigoted people and bigoted opinions, but by showing people that those who are right-wing, who hyper-focus on marginalized communities and make a mockery of them, are actually strange, they're weird, they're obsessed. It's the same social pressure dynamic that I was talking about. I think that's a better way to deal with it. It's a better way to deal with it than to immediately clamp on people. Because in many circumstances, due to the same dynamic that I explained, systemic factors at play and the social conditioning that comes along with it, many people don't even realize that they are engaging in oftentimes dangerous rhetoric or dehumanizing rhetoric. They just think like, oh, this is just a joke. What's the problem? My point is, not everyone that tries to make a joke, sometimes even a cruel one, is objectively a fascist. But if we check them and say, hey man, that's kind of, why are you saying this? Especially after developing social capital with those people. In my experience, that's a much more successful way, coming across not like a hall monitor, but instead as someone who can be more productive in changing their minds. Now, of course, as I always say, this is not something that I expect from people who are directly being marginalized in that moment. And I do understand why people get mad. I understand it. That can be their first step to finding them. Yeah, exactly. I think these broader initiatives of having normal relationships with people who are not like outwardly political content creators, for example, can also help many find communities like this one. It's been very effective. And it's been especially effective. If it wasn't, then the right wing and these like dipshit, incel, racist, transphobic people wouldn't be actively trying to make me into a toxic person that is irredeemable and even go after my friends who have nothing to do with politics at all. They do that so that I am isolated in general, because they realize that if I'm not isolated and I have normal relationships with these other communities, then their fan bases will be much more charitable to my worldview. And God forbid, maybe even change their perspective. Cuties problem is unrelated to you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not very familiar with what happened. I'm just talking about my own principles that I oftentimes repeat to an audience that doesn't want to hear it. That's not true, actually. Many of you do want to hear it. Some of you even recognize that you took advantage of that charitable tone that I took on for whatever perceived bigotry that you exhibited, and therefore became who you are now. I'll always point to Speed's growth and why I always present Speed as like a wonderful example of growth in general, even though the odds were absolutely stacked against that. And I'll always present someone like Jason, for example, as a great alternative. People that aren't expressly political at all. The type of content creators that are seen as apolitical. And yet, they're much more tolerant. These guys could just as easily been Aiden Ross adjacent content creators, you know? And it's important for us to recognize that where a lot of people go, oh, wow, look at that. You're, you know, offering charity to people just because they're not like racist shitheads or whatever. But it's like, yeah, if the entire media environment nowadays, especially after Elon Musk took over Twitter, is rewarding you for being a racist shithead and you're not doing that, then, you know, I'm going to be nicer about that. I'm going to weigh it against environmental circumstances. That's it. You feel me? And I do this to people who have declared me their enemy, you know? People who have declared me to be their ops and shit too.